BBL 851, turn right, heading 180. Order 14 Papa, turn right 245, report local line established 27.
Welcome back to the channel. Yesterday I took the day off, but we are back and you can expect lots more double uploads coming this week. First things first, if you haven't followed me on Twitter, I'd highly recommend doing so. For more aviation news, photography and general updates, you can simply search at DJ's Aviation. Now to the case in point, that being the video at hand. A lot has happened in the past week within the aviation industry, and as always, it's time to recap the most intriguing and also noteworthy moments that did not get their own separate video. We begin within Australia as the national carrier, following comments from the CEO Alan Joyce, note that they're looking to add new destinations to their international network come 2022. The airline is still actively trying to resume international flights from December of this year. However, it isn't hard to see why. Many people are not that confident this will indeed happen, let alone the 2022 expansion plans. Qantas has offered customers the opportunity to book international flights and noted down a restart date for services time and time before, only to cancel all bookings a week later, be slow with processing refunds, or only offer simply a voucher. Qantas has included destinations within Asia for their 2022 expansion, including that of Taiwan and South Korea, which have both been named. However, the airline is still also looking back into Project Sunrise with the A350-1000, the ambition to fly the longest services in the world from Sydney to New York, Melbourne to London, all without a single stop. Plans for Project Sunrise were certainly put on hold with the pandemic arriving, but it is encouraging that the airline still wants to partake in these plans. Ultimately, for the Australian airline though, the biggest concern remains transparency from the government and clarification regarding moving ahead with reopening borders and announcing their flights, and in addition, the major problem with current hotel quarantine, with a cost of upwards of over $3,000 and then a flight and PCR fees. Even if borders opened in this current state, travelling is by no means achievable. First, we need to sort out home quarantine before airlines can do anything. And with all that being said, at the end of the day for Qantas, they're relying on the government. They can offer these flights, but if the government remain firm with borders being shut and only allow people to leave with exemption, which are near on impossible to actually get a hold of, it's not looking likely that Qantas would be able to resume these services. We'll just have to wait and see, but I'll continue to provide updates whenever they do emerge. For airline mergers, there's always incredibly fascinating to discuss. However, one of the most significant mergers currently in the works by a country mile is surrounding that of Asiana Airlines and Korean Air, which, following the conclusion of the merger, would make a supercarrier, while also significantly aiding the growth and therefore expansion of new low-cost units within Asia. The Malaysia Aviation Commission this past week actually approved the merger between the two airlines. Asiana has been a carrier that's financial position has weakened over recent years. However, with the acquisition by Korean Air, the Commission basically said that they believe it'll be for the best. The Commission said, as the only sector regulator in Malaysia with the function to decide on competition-related matters for anticipated mergers and mergers, our approval of the Korean Air and Asiana merger takes into full consideration the information and feedback presented by all parties, and the Commission's own research and analysis. It's important to note that the approval has really come from understanding what this merger will mean for the Malaysian aviation sector as well. While of course the aim for the new Korean Air will be to improve their market share in various different sectors around Asia, for Malaysia they actually want to protect their aviation sector just as much, which as we know has taken a massive hit over recent years. Latam has been a carrier that's flown under the radar of late, but has most definitely been fighting their own battles in the South American sector alongside that of Avianca. The airline has released a new business plan that will likely turn around the airline's fortune in the past week. This 5-year business turnaround plan is very similar to that of what we saw Etihad Airways roll out in recent years as well. With that being said, the position Etihad was in was far dire than that of Latam, and the pandemic definitely hindered their progress massively. The plan is by 2024 for the airline to return to profitability, and is going to achieve this thanks to the many changes, but in addition, backing from various different parties in regards to funds. For Latam, though, their success with this business model is hinged on if they see a rise in South America for travel demand. Current forecasts predict that by early 2022, it'll be most likely back to normal, But given the ever-changing aviation industry, these things, as you can probably imagine, are very hard to predict and should be taken with a grain of salt. Nevertheless, Latam has been an essential part of the industry for some time, and I'll be closely following their developments as the years do progress. Once again, just to reiterate, they aim for the goal of profitability by 2024, which is now just 3 years away. Cathay Pacific is the last carrier to be covered in today's video, and it's not necessarily the most fantastic news, as you may probably imagine. The airline once again reported an abysmal month of July, with traffic levels being 98% down on pre-pandemic levels. While their average load factor was just 28%, they actually only carried 54,000 passengers, which signifies just the amount of flights they are operating and how proof that their network re-establishment has not necessarily been to a satisfactory level. However, at the same time, you can't really blame them, given the current restrictions in place. Now, Reuters has reported that the London pilot base will be closed. However, for Cathay Pacific, this will not be the only base that will be closing following the effects of the pandemic, with also both Reuters and Bloomberg continuing on to report that the airline will assess its US base and whether or not it believes it is the right decision to keep it open in the long term. Bases that have been already included are Canada, Germany, Australia, and finally New Zealand, with all of these shutting up shop. This highlights the pandemic's effect in a real way. The airline has been hit hard and is now making all the necessary changes to its overall business to try and solidify its place within the industry for the long term. Cathay Pacific have been a carrier that's been around for a very, very long time, and I think the last thing any of us would want to see happen is for the airline to simply cease to exist following the conclusion, hopefully, of this pandemic. What are your thoughts on the topics discussed in this video, from potentially the discussions surrounding Latam and them hoping to return to profitability by 2024, or maybe updates surrounding that very intriguing Korean Air and Asiana Airlines merger? How do you believe that the merger will impact both Korean Air and also the domestic airlines within the sector? Do you believe that they'll be able to grow, or will something else happen? Additionally, I'd be very, very interested to hear your take regarding Qantas and their future expansion for 2022, as well as their ambitious plans for December of this year to restart international travel. If you're unaware, I do have a weekly podcast that can be streamed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Audible, Amazon, and so forth. And a hot topic of discussion in these weekly podcasts have been centering around Qantas and their international travel. Will it happen? Why won't it happen? I discuss that and more. You can go and check that out if you have any spare time. Once again, thank you so much for tuning into another video here on the channel. Stay tuned, where in a couple of hours I'll be back with another big Airbus order to discuss. Thanks once again, and I will see you then.